on location in Danville, Indiana today. Where in a courthouse just like this one, Mike Tyson was convicted of raping Desiree Washington a little over a year and a half ago. Now, the courts have already decided that Mike Tyson is guilty. As a matter of fact, he was convicted of rape. And that's not what we're here to talk about today. What we're here to talk about is the fact that right now, Mike Tyson wants something very, very badly. And what he wants is a new trial. And recently I had an opportunity to talk to Mike Tyson in prison.
I just want the truth to be heard, and I just want to have this new trial, you know what I mean? I just want this to be heard. I just want to be vindicated. I'm not looking for no money. I'm not looking for anything. I just want to be vindicated.
Now, later in the show, we're going to talk to some experts on both sides of the issue, and you'll hear some astonishing comments from some of the jurors who sat on the first trial. And you'll also hear, for the first time, some information from a former boyfriend of Desiree Washington who claims that she accused him of raping her years ago. But first, let's listen to part of my conversation with Mike Tyson. I got off a plane, and somebody said, "Why the hell are you talking to him now? Why? Isn't it over? He's there. What good is it going to do to talk to him and rehash this now?" People need to hear from you why you think or know you need to have an appeal.
I definitely, to my dying word, I haven't did anything to violate this woman, but the evidence coming up after the appeal, after my sentencing process here, shows that this lady had reneged on things that she said, lied to the jury, and various other things as far as accusing someone else for the same crime, and I feel that it should be heard.
You are the brute. You are the animal. You abuse women every opportunity you get. I mean, this is what the public said. You abuse women every opportunity you get, and there's no such thing as date rape in the sense that if a woman says no, I don't care if it's a date or an acquaintance, and you do continue on the act, then it's rape.
I agree.
You do?
Yeah. If you're with a woman and if no is no, it's no.
Did you ever get a no?
Huh? If I got a no, then I'm gone. You know, I mean, it's never the situation. Well, I always hate to put myself in this situation because sometimes it doesn't make me modest, and I try my best now to be modest because I know sometime in the past I was never modest, and I never had to be put in that situation. You know what I mean? And thanks to God, I was in a situation where women are plentiful. I have them, and I mean, it's like buying new cars. You know what I mean? And nothing to be derogatory. And it's just the position I was in. I don't know why they want to. Maybe I have an idea, but come on. I know. Why do I? Please.
The only authorities in this entire case are you and Desiree Washington.
Exactly. So know what that means? This is what this means. That means 6 or 4 cops can beat the hell out of a guy and almost kill him, beat him to death, and the whole world can see that, right? And only one person could say, I committed a crime, and I can get convicted, and they can walk free. So that's what that means.
There were 3 witnesses who were not allowed to testify.
Now, it's not something that's never heard again in the history of court. So you tell me, when 3 witnesses have the power to save a man's life, or a woman's life, whoever life it may be, I mean, you tell me about this. Man, these people in this court system, and court system in general, they cover up crimes that are, I mean, that are a disgrace to a nation of savages, man. Come on, I mean, this is insane.
Did the attorney that you have, and I don't want you to slam dunk or come down on your past attorneys, but do you think that they prepared you well?
Well, I don't, as you said, like that, I don't want to comment on that.
Okay, all right.
Because it wouldn't dignify me if I made a comment, so I'm not willing to do that.
All right. Do you think that, forget commenting on the attorney itself, do you think your testimony at the grand jury could have been better?
I told the truth. Mm-hmm. It couldn't have been any better. I just told the truth.
While you were sitting there and you were looking up at that judge, did you ever get a feeling from her throughout the trial that it's over for me?
Oh, I knew that as soon as I stepped in that courtroom. I knew I didn't have anything to play.
Why?
I felt the vibes.
From her?
From the atmosphere being in that courtroom. I felt the vibes. And don't get me wrong, I'm no psychic by any means. I used to say, oh, this is it. I'm out there. Mm-hmm. And I was already prepared for it.
One of the news reports claims that at one point in the trial, you turned around and said, you know, I'm going to win this. We'll win this because I always win. Is that true?
That's what I said.
And at what point in the trial did you feel that?
Huh?
At what point during trial?
I made that statement because the person that had asked for an autograph, I gave him an autograph, and they said, I hope you win. And I said, well, I always win. Not meaning a particular case, this particular case, but in life, I will win, regardless. After everything's over, and the coffin's closed on my life, and there's Mike Tyson born this shit and dash, and at the end of the dash, I would have won, regardless of whatever. When the end of my life, I would have won.
When we come back, we'll hear a lot more of our interview with Mike Tyson in prison. We'll be back right after this. Today in Danville, Indiana, bringing you a very special edition of the Montel Williams Show. And we're in a courthouse, and a courthouse just like this one, where over a year and a half ago, Mike Tyson was convicted of rape. Why don't we listen to a little bit more of what Mike had to say?
I would never allow something like this to break my spirit. You know what I mean? They don't break the average guy in here, the average man. And I feel he's nowhere near the kind of person I am. And if I won't allow that to happen to him, I won't allow it to happen to myself.
Is there anybody you trust completely other than Mike?
Oh, man, no.
Anybody you trust close to?
No.
Is vindication more important than freedom?
Exactly. I was just, the situation that occurred, you know what I mean, it's just, I don't want my children, you know what I mean, it's just very difficult. I just want my children to have to live through that, you know what I mean? That's why I never, like having a boy, I have a little girl named Michael Tyson, but I would never want to have a boy, and this is crazy, and this is just the way that people don't care. I would never want to name my son after me, because I would hate for him to have to ever live through that, being Mike Tyson, and being the story of what's been labeled on his father. I would never name a boy after me.
Every day is a major event in your life being in here, but your father passed in here. They wouldn't let you go see him. What went through you when that happened?
Can I tell you something? It's just something I was aware. I wasn't aware that he was dying, but when it happened, I already knew that I'm not going to see him, and it's just, this is it. This is my life. You know what I mean? There's things that, man, and a lot of people say, how can you do that? Being who you are, you just become accustomed to handling hardship. You're just accustomed to it. It hurts just like another person. I used to never cry outward. I cry perhaps inside, but I never cry like tears and all that. But I feel the same as somebody else that lost their family and they're going irate and they're crying, hitting their head against the wall, going, trying to rip the coffin up and go. I feel the same way, just that I don't reflect my feelings that way.
Are you still Mike Tyson, the Mike Tyson of the ring that we knew? Could you get back in and fight?
When I get out here, you think I'm 28, 29. What can I do? Who can I fight? At me being 28, 29, who can I fight? And I've been fighting all my life. Since I was like 12, 11 years old, I've been fighting. Now I'm 20. People may say, well, he's still healthy. He's 28 years old, 20. I've been fighting all my life. I've been fighting probably longer than I've been doing anything else.
Right. So you think it's over then?
Yes, it's a possibility. And that's just being a reality, because there has to be more than life than just people saying, well, we need you back in the ring. You know what I mean? That's an insult to me. People insult me about it. We got to wait till you get back. I got to bet money. They have no kind of emotional feelings for me as a person.
If you don't go back in the ring, what is anybody going to get from Mike?
I've got a new concept from being in this place. It's your life. I do what I want with it. You know what I mean? We're not going to live long, because me being here and people dying, and I think about myself and I say, God, those guys died. These young businessmen died, 50 years old, had everything in the world. He died. Arthur Ashe died. And I say to myself, nothing's ever guaranteed to any of us, man.
What if we needed Mike Tyson, once he's out of here, to go and work with kids to keep them from being here? Well, if we needed that, would he do it?
Well, Mike Tyson has to take care of it. I'm screwed up. You know, I know it seems like we're having this great thing, and he's not a bad conversation, but I'm devastated, to be honest with you. So I might have to get all my faculties together before I can do anything for anyone. Hopefully I don't leave it here.
What do you think about that comment from him?
I think that that's what he's been told. I think when you see in the interview, he doesn't accept responsibility for any of it. It's everybody against him. It's from the beginning, they said that when he walked in, they said that. But how can we say he's sorry when he doesn't think, he really thinks he did nothing wrong? So how can we say that he would say he was sorry to her when I think he thinks he's a victim, but that's what he's been told. People set him up to say, you can't do wrong. What about what Desiree feels? What about if she feels betrayed, or if she feels that she's been done wrong? Why are all of his words value and hers are valued less?
Okay, but I think that the court did say her words were valued because they did convict him. Yes, ma'am. Stand up. Sure.
I think he deserves a second chance. Everybody deserves a second chance. Everybody makes mistakes in life, but you can never learn from your mistakes unless you make them.
Okay, but if you say he deserves a second chance, then most people would say what he's getting is what's right because he's in prison, and his second chance will come when he gets out to prove himself. Is that what you mean?
No, he deserves a second. He deserves,
trial?
Yeah, he deserves a second trial. He deserves to get his appeal.
Okay, all right. Well, yes, sir. Why don't you stand up?
I think Mike was done a great wrong because he was a victim of society. The way they felt he was a boxer, he had a lot of money. All the women knew that he had a lot of money, so they were after his money. They took advantage of him, and the court went along with it and did him unjust.
Okay, but what do you think about his comment? Great. Later on in the show, we're going to get an opportunity to listen to some experts on both sides of the Tyson appeal issue and hear what they have to say, and we'll hear a little bit more from the conversation from Mike within the Indiana Youth Center. We'll be back right after this.
You know, I want to see the new evidence that came about. And I just want you to know, I'm not afraid. Maybe Miss Washington is afraid of a new trial, but I'm not afraid of it.
You've been watching an interview that I recently had with Mike Tyson inside the Indiana Youth Center. And as I mentioned before, Mike has served 14 months of a 6-year sentence for being convicted of rape. Now, recently, Mike Tyson's attorneys have filed an appeal, and we decided to bring our show here to Danville, Indiana, to talk with some noted experts. And you'll also hear from 4 of the original jury members who stated that 2 of them state that Tyson may need a new trial, and the other 2 say that they're not sure. And for the first time, you will hear from one of Desiree Washington's former high school boyfriends who now says that she once accused him of rape. Well, joining us right now are Nat Dershowitz. He is part of Mike Tyson's legal appeal team and the brother of noted Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. Also joining us is Gloria Allred, a Los Angeles-based attorney, and she says that women everywhere should be encouraged by the Tyson verdict. Mr. Andy Kerr, an attorney who was at the Tyson trial every day, and he's also a noted professor here at the Indiana Law School, and Mr. Mark Shaw, author of the controversial new book called Down for the Count. Thank you all for being here on the show. Now, Nat, let's start with you. You are part of the Tyson defense team and the appeal team, and why an appeal? I mean, that's the question that everybody's asking. Why do you think that there are grounds for appeal?
Mike has maintained since the beginning that the sex that took place in the Canterbury was consensual, that Desiree had consented. Then the question is, why was he convicted? And the reason is the trial wasn't fair. There was a judge picked by the prosecutor who kept information away from the jury, wouldn't let the jury know important things. We now have learned that a lot of the things that Desiree has said were false. And we also know that Desiree was not the Desiree as painted to that jury. The jury knew all of the facts. We don't want to keep anything out. All of the facts should be known to a jury. Let a jury decide. Mike wants everything to come out, and he thinks the answer will be he's going to walk out of this thing.
Okay, now, Gloria, I want to come to you because we're going to go over each specific issue of the appeal a little later. But one thing that Nat said was the fact that, you know, there are some information about Desiree Washington's past that should have come out because the picture that was painted of her during the trial was really much different than who she is. Do you think that that should be allowed in the courtroom?
Well, I just think it's outrageous that at this point, after he has been convicted of rape and 2 felony counts of criminal deviant conduct, that an old boyfriend should somehow be dragged out of the closet to make these scurrilous accusations that she's made a false charge of rape. And I'm very happy that Indiana and many other states have something called a rape shield law, which prohibits such accusations from being brought into the courtroom. Because, first of all, Desiree Washington, under penalty of perjury, denies that she ever had sexual intercourse with penetration with this man who accuses her of this lie. And secondly, she's never accused him of rape. So why should this be brought out at this time when Mike Tyson is simply trying to look like the victim when the real victim is Desiree Washington?
Okay, but Gloria, if that is what we hinge it on and we say that because Desiree has told the truth, but in the appeal there is an indication, and an indication from the Rhode Island Supreme Court that says that Desiree possibly and her parents possibly have not been telling the truth.
Well, I know that it's a tactic of some defense counsel to try to make Desiree out as a liar. But the fact is the jury believed her. The fact is that the judge has said on the record that Desiree did not perjure herself. And I am convinced that when the judge has found it and the jury, after having heard all of the evidence, has found it, that Desiree is the one who's telling the truth, and they didn't believe Mike Tyson, and it was for good reason. Let's let this decision stand once and for all.
Montel, the whole question is whether the jury heard all of the evidence. When you have a judge picked by the prosecutor who excludes witnesses who would confirm what Mike said occurred in the car and specifically contradict Desiree, why shouldn't the jury hear that? Let them make the determination.
Okay, now hold
Let them
right
know
there.
the facts. Then they can decide.
Hold right there for just 1 second. I want to ask Andy. Andy, you were in the courtroom every day. You saw the trial as it unfolded. First question is, there are a lot of issues in this appeal, and we're going to go through those. I promise you we are going to get through those one at a time so we know clearly what these issues are. But when you were watching the trial, did you think at the time that there were things that were omitted? Did you think that there was a problem with the way things were going on in the courtroom? Did you think that, I know you knew that 3 witnesses were omitted and were not allowed to testify. Did you think that that was wrong at the time, or did you think it was right?
And during the trial, I heard the ruling that these 3 witnesses were precluded from testifying, and I immediately said that was error, and I even said it was reversible error at the time. So right during the trial, I made that comment on the error. Okay. Later, however, you need to know that later I found out what the 3 witnesses purportedly were going to say, and at that point I said, we still have an error, but I believe it's harmless error because I don't believe the 3 witnesses would really be helpful to Mike's case.
And I agree with him, Montel, because these 3 witnesses were not in the room when the rape took place. They are people who would allegedly say what happened after they came out of the limousine and going into the hotel. And Mike could testify to that. Desiree testified to that. The limousine driver testified to that. And so I think that it's foolish to say that that would, in fact, be relevant on the issue of whether she said no or yes to an act of sexual intercourse.
Montel, if I may, all of these comments have to do with different things about the trial. But doesn't anybody realize, the reason I wrote this book is because this kind of a case is every person in this room's nightmare. It's a situation where you are accused of a serious crime. There are no witnesses. You fall into the hands of an attorney that you trust who does not know what he's doing. You're involved with a judge who is a pro-prosecution judge from way back with sex crimes. And if you'll look in the book, you find out that the jury guessed at 2 out of the 3 counts against Mike Tyson. Anybody in this room, including Mike Tyson, no matter what they've done, deserves a fair trial. And he didn't get one.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, you know, this is our justice system taking care of us, and if they can't take care of us properly and do what they need to do in order to take care of the people, I mean, this isn't, you know, they threw this guy behind bars, you know. I mean, they locked him up. This is his life that these people are dealing with. And whoever's up there on that bench or that seat playing God, that's not right. If we don't have all the facts, why can they just take some and go with that? Okay. I mean, it's just not right. It's supposed to be our people that take care of us, what we pay our money for.
And well, you know, that's a good point, because, Gloria, I've got to ask you that. The issue here, again, when we look at the points about the appeal, we're going to take a break in a second, and when we come back in the next segment, Nat, I want you to go down each specific issue in the appeal so we all can clearly understand what that's about. But for you, Gloria, I mean, you've tried cases for males and for females. You're not just a woman's activist, and we know that now. As a matter of fact, you just recently won one of the biggest cases, people who need to know this, in the country for a man who charged his female boss of sexual harassment, and you won the biggest landmark case for that. So this is not just a woman's issue, but being an attorney like you are, why would you say that this man does not deserve to have all the evidence heard and does not deserve to be tried fairly? That's the issue.
Oh, I definitely think he deserved to have a fair trial, but my position is that he had that fair trial, that all of the relevant and admissible evidence that his attorney wanted to present, that should have been presented, that under the laws of the state of Indiana were permitted to be presented, were presented. He got a fair trial. He doesn't like the result, and that's why he wants another trial. He even, and that's what's wrong with him. Everyone cannot have a second bite at the apple just because he lost. He has to show that there is an actual reason why he deserves to have a fair trial, and he didn't get one, and I think he got it.
All right, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to find out why Mike and why his appeal team believes he needs to have that second bite at an apple. Talking about whether or not Mike Tyson should be granted a new trial based on his appeal. And Mr. Dershowitz, let's just make sure that everyone is speaking from the same point of paper and piece of paper right now. Could you please just tell us what are the specific points? Go one at a time.
The first point is the exclusion of the 3 witnesses. Let me set the stage for it. You have Desiree testifying. She gets into the limousine. Mike kisses her. She jumps back. She never touches him. They drive over to the Canterbury. He walks ahead of her. She walks behind. That's her testimony. He testifies. They get into the limousine. She's all over him. They're hugging and kissing and all over each other in the car. In the middle of the trial, 3 witnesses come forward. They had been at the Canterbury. Nobody knew about them. They're disinterested. They have nothing to do with Mike Tyson. One of them was able to, saw them coming to the hotel, looked in the window of the limousine, said to the other one, "There's Mike Tyson. They're all over each other." This witness was not allowed to testify. The second one, who heard the testimony, was not allowed to testify. The third one was in the hotel room, in the hotel lobby. She saw them holding hands walking in. The testimony would have contradicted everything Desiree said before they went to the room, supported everything Mike said.
All right.
Anybody who suggests that this is irrelevant is crazy.
Okay.
It's completely relevant to what was going on.
Don't argue it right now. Just give me the point.
That's the first issue.
That's the first point.
Then the second question is, the way the charge went to the jury, this jury was completely confused as to what their responsibility was. They were told that all they have to do is figure out whether she consented. Under normal law, the question is whether or not he reasonably thought that she consented. Jury was never asked that question. So therefore, I won't argue it. Okay, the third point is there was a real reason why Desiree would make up this story. There was a history here, and a history of her relationships with her father, which was excluded. The jury was not allowed to know about it, and as a matter of fact, there's a sealing order. We can't get into it. Next, the judge was picked by the prosecutor. The prosecutor had a choice. Can you imagine you're going to trial, civil case, criminal case, you're about to go to jail, you find out your adversary is the one that picked the judge. You're going to feel comfortable? I wouldn't feel comfortable. I don't know anybody here who would feel comfortable. Doesn't happen anywhere else in the United States. This is the only place. That's an issue. Then we find out Desiree is portrayed in this trial as this person who only wants to keep the media away, doesn't want her name known, is not out for money. She testifies that way at the trial. You can read her actual testimony. The lawyer who represented her finds out that she lied. He's excluded from the trial. But he reads in the newspapers that she testified she has no financial arrangement with him. He's saying, hey, I have a problem. I know my client is lying. What do I do? He's from Rhode Island. He goes to the disciplinary board and says, what am I supposed to do? They said, you go tell him in Indiana. He says, no. She goes to the Supreme Court of Rhode Island and says, what should I do? They said, you go tell the people in Indiana, have them do an investigation. No investigation has taken place.
And you have the documents from the Supreme Court in Rhode Island that say that the courts in Indiana should do an investigation based on the fact that the lawyer himself says that his client perjured him.
And we then got a copy of the document 12 days after.
Montel.
12 days after.
Montel, this man is more full of beans than his brother.
I'll give you the document.
When you get down to these documents, and the reason these things are in the book is because, number one, that document says nothing about television and film rights. It's a plain document that she signed. Oh, that's all you and your brother talk about. You're talk show junkies.
I will show you that she lied. She said, question was, do you have a contingency fee? She's asked at trial.
It doesn't say that.
Do you have a financial arrangement? Let me finish. I'll give you the documents.
No, I think you finish. Let me go ahead.
If I may.
The judge, Montel,
let me just finish the point.
The judge in this case, every time they present these issues to people, they present them in their own light. In this particular case,
look at the facts.
He knows the trial judge. He gave you that big speech out there about the fact they didn't have to have Judge, that they didn't want Judge Gifford because she was picked by the prosecution.
Right.
They could have asked for a change of judge. They didn't do that. Every time they bring these things out. That's why I wrote this book, because it brings everything back to square one.
Okay.
Mike Tyson's trial lawyer is the problem here,
All right.
and they know it.
That right there is not one of the issues in this appeal.
It should be.
But it's not. And since it is not one of the issues in the appeal, I will come back to the points that I said before. One is that if there's a document that says that there was some sort of perjury that took place, then maybe that is grounds for an appeal. This whole issue of the state and the prosecutor being able to pick a judge, that's another issue for an appeal, or is it, Gloria?
Well, part of the problem is that Mike Tyson's attorney never subpoenaed that so-called contingency fee document that they now would like to say should have been in evidence. And if they thought it was, how do you do it? It's called the law of discovery, and you know that as well as I do.
In answer to the questions at discovery. They asked her the...
He is not bound by what... Wait, you should know.
She lied
and you do
to
know.
them.
Wait, Nat,
She
you know that
lied.
he is not bound by what she says. He can subpoena the document, the contingency fee agreement with her attorney. Yes.
You don't know about it. How do you subpoena what you don't know?
If you doubt it, and obviously you think she's a liar, obviously your whole point is that she's a liar, she's a liar, she's a liar, so then you would subpoena the document to show she is a liar if you think she is.
Hold on.
And they didn't do it.
Hold on just a
Gloria,
second.
Montel's right, but...
You mean
Montel Gloria's right. That's what he said.
Excuse me. Gloria's right, but the problem you have is you have the prosecution who misled the defense in terms of where that document was. As I say, the whole case goes back to the legal participants here in this case. Nathan's right and Gloria's right, and I hate to admit that. It all goes back to the fact that the prosecution misled the defense team about that document.
Now, let's stop for a minute. But Nat, also, let me just stop for a second, because, as you were just talking, something just registered me. We have all used the term in this court, liar, liar, liar. And none of us, unless a court states, because so far the court said, whether we like it or not, Desiree Washington wasn't lying, because that's why they convicted Mike. So for us to say liar, 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 and continue to use that term, I think we ought to back off that a little bit and stop doing that, because we don't know until it's proven in a court. Let me hear from you, sir. Mr. Crow, yes.
I want to clear up one point. I agree with Nathan on this one issue. That is, that on this perjury issue, that's the one in which there should be a reversal and appeal. I don't agree on the other issues, but on that one alone. And we need to clarify what it is we're saying that Desiree lied about. And the only lie that we're talking about is the fact that on the witness stand during the jury trial, during Mike's trial, she said, we did not have a fee agreement with an attorney. We had not decided to file a civil lawsuit. We had not hired an attorney in any way in that regard. All we did was hire an attorney to help us with the news media. She testified that way. Her father testified that way. And now, after the trial, we learn that they had a fee agreement with an attorney that apparently was signed within maybe 10 days after this incident occurred.
But Andy,
that's the question.
But there is another point here. There is one other point that's in the appeal, and that is there is an accusation on the part of the defense in the appeal that says that when she was on the stand and talked about her ride over to the hotel and her arrival at the hotel, there was no activity between her and Mike, where 3 witnesses were excluded from testifying that they saw what they think they saw. So that is also something that would put testimony in dispute. Am I right or wrong?
On that issue, again, I said during the trial that that was error, and it was reversible error. The defendant should have been allowed to bring those witnesses in. But later, when we find out what those witnesses said, we cannot say there was any real harm there. That's the issue that's being debated. I still say it was error.
The jurors say it wouldn't have made any difference.
Wouldn't have made any difference.
Well, I'll tell you what. We're going to take a break.
We
will take a break, and so I can, wipe this head off. But we'll take a break and come back, and I will tell you that the jurors don't say... I interviewed the jurors, 4 of the jurors yesterday, and they do not agree with what you just said. You said that they said it wouldn't make a difference? Yes. 2 of them said, most definitely, to them, it would have made a big difference. We'll be back right after this.
If we had heard this evidence then, maybe I couldn't have come to the decision that I did.
When in Indianapolis, stay at the Best Western Waterfront Plaza, Indianapolis. Visit our mini resort and enjoy our atrium, pool, and tropical setting. The best Western Waterfront Plaza, Indianapolis.
Now, yesterday I had a chance to talk with 4 members of the jury. We talked to Dave, Chuck, a lady who wants to be called Shirley, and also Mike. And I think you'll be very surprised at what they had to say.
I think we should have heard their testimony. It shouldn't have been denied to us. I mean, we were there to hear testimony and to make our decision on, you know, what we heard in court. And if it was me on trial and there was a piece of evidence out there, I'd sure want the jury to hear that.
I don't care what went on in the limousine. I don't care if she was all over him. That does not give him the right to take advantage of her, and I believe that he did.
I still feel that we were right, and being right, he does not deserve a new trial.
There's other things that's come now to make me feel there's reasonable doubt. I don't think that all the evidence was presented. I think evidence was kept from us. Intentionally, maybe, maybe not intentionally. Accidentally, maybe not accidentally. I don't know.
Being the only woman juror that we're talking to right now, people will say, well, Montel, you know, you set this up because Shirley has got to say this for women.
This has nothing to do with me being a woman's activist and all men should, you know, go straight to you-know-where because they do this. Men get raped too. This is an issue of someone taking advantage of another person.
Now, as you can see from their testimony, or at least not their testimony, but their interview with me, that some of the jurors were a little confused. And maybe that's an issue. I don't know if that's an issue or not.
But Montel, how can you at this time try to second-guess those poor jurors who sat in that box? They've been swept through this whole thing time and time again. I want to make sure I have this quote right because it came from Nathan's brother. They called Desiree a money-grubbing gold digger who's a liar to boot. Somebody ought to stick up for Desiree here, you know. I mean, she had the dignity and the courage to come forward here. I don't know if she told the truth or not. I don't try to do that in the book. I want the reader to make up their mind. But she came forward and she had the courage to do this. She's been dragged through the mud now, and now you want to go back to the jurors and ask them if these things would make a difference. How could that be possible?
And Montel, at what point does Desiree get to go on with her life? I mean, 2 people are entitled to a fair trial. Mike Tyson is, but also Desiree Washington. And she had that trial, and she should be able to go on with her life. Now, Mike Tyson lost in the courtroom. Now he wants to go to the court of public opinion, where people don't have to swear under oath. They don't have to be subjected to the limits of perjury that they would in a courtroom. Let him answer to the courts and stop trying to make himself the victim and Desiree the brute, when in fact she is a person who was innocent, who was trying to go on with her life, and she should not be put on trial in this way.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Well, what I think a lot of people are missing is that this type of rape trial is extraordinarily unusual. We are not talking about a typical rape trial here, folks. Most rape trials last 1 day, maybe 2. Maybe you have a public defender who has a huge caseload and talks to you for a brief period of time. Maybe you hire a private attorney who is not an expert in rape. Maybe you don't have a lot of money. Maybe you don't get to have a 2-week rape trial. Maybe you don't have the money to fly in witnesses from all over the country who have every opportunity to punch holes in the story that the witnesses are telling that the prosecution has presented. The prosecution has to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It's the job of the defense attorneys to punch holes in that so that they create doubt in the minds of the jury. They had 2 whole weeks to create doubt in the minds of the jury, and they were not able to do it. 2 whole weeks, and they could have hired, with all of their money, as Gloria said, any lawyers they want. They may have made a mistake in who they hire, but lots of trials, you make a mistake in who you hire, and that doesn't mean that you get a second trial just because you didn't hire attorneys that later you decide didn't do the best possible job for you.
I'll tell you what, this is something I would never do on the Montel Williams Show. But I'm going to give 1, 2, 3, 4 guests of mine an opportunity to make a decision about the outcome of the show. There is a piece of tape that I have from a former boyfriend of Desiree Washington. Should I show that tape to the public? Let's go. Nat?
Absolutely not. It has nothing to do with this particular case. It has nothing to do with those facts. Okay. And Montel, it has nothing to do with what happened on during those 5 minutes on that bed. That's what we're talking about here. No.
Andy?
I would say no.
You would say no? What do you say, Gloria?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not? What do you say?
And I say definitely. A false accusation is always admissible, whether of rape or anything else. If I falsely accuse somebody of stealing from me 5 times before, and on the 6th time I go and I falsely accuse somebody else of stealing, the jury should know that.
Oh, Nathan, it's not
and the
always
jury should
admissible.
know.
You know
and
better
it's
than that.
admissible in every court in the United
better than
States.
that. Come on.
This may be a false accusation that she made a false accusation.
There is witnesses. Her mother testified at the deposition about the incident. You have a witness who she told about what happened afterwards. She admitted it was a false accusation.
Wait a minute, do I have a...
So get the facts in there. Let the jury decide.
Do I have a judge in this audience? No, I don't have a judge in this audience.
It was 3-1. You said you'd go with
It's
the panel.
3-1. We got to go with the panel. We will hold that. I'll tell you what I will do. We will hold that piece of tape from this show. I will reserve the right to air that tape again if I hear from the public that you want to see it. If the public tells me you want me to show it, I'll show you that tape at a later date. We'll be back right after this.
Receive a new trial? We'd like your opinion. Call 1-900-933-3900. Press 1 for yes or 2 for no. Each call costs 75 cents per minute. All proceeds will benefit the United Negro College Fund, Incorporated.
We're still here in Danville, Indiana, in a courthouse pretty much similar to the one that Mike Tyson was convicted in. And before we went to break, or as we were on break, Laura, you asked me, there may be a circumstance, or is there any circumstance where you feel that that tape of the gentleman who was accused, Desiree, of lying about a past experience, there is a point that maybe that should be seen? Do you think there is?
I think only one circumstance and only one that would fit, and that would be if it was demonstrably false. That is, if she had accused him of rape, if there was a prosecution, if in that prosecution he was acquitted, then and only then do I think it should be admitted or played. But if she's never even reported it to the police, and if she denies ever having had sexual intercourse, as she does, then I just think it's scandalous to even think of playing that tape.
Okay, and what do you think?
None of us were in that room the night that it happened, but one thing we do know, all of us can agree on, that she went there at 2 in the morning, willingly. No one pushed her, no one begged her. He asked her to come. She went there willingly and able. And what did she think she was going there for at 2 in the morning? To pop popcorn and eat cookies? What did she think she was going there for?
What this woman just said is just absolutely outrageous. Any woman, when a woman goes alone to a room with a man, she is consenting to one thing, and one thing only, and that is to be alone in a room with a man.
Gloria, you know, I still come back to the issue, and again, because in this conversation that we've had for the last hour, and we did not want to get into the particulars like the 2 a.m. or this or that, all that kind of stuff. Just looking at the appeal, if Mike Tyson were your client, would he have grounds for an appeal?
I don't think that there should be a new trial. But on the other hand, if the Court of Appeals finds that his rights were violated, then perhaps there should be a new trial. And I think he certainly has a right to present all of his arguments to the Court of Appeals, as he is doing through his new competent counsel that he has, to make his best arguments, and he's doing it. But then I don't think he should be smearing Desiree Washington in the process either. I just think it's tremendously unfair to her. I think it has a chilling effect on other rape victims. And I don't think there should be a message sent to men that they have a license to rape because a woman goes to their room at 2 a.m. because they don't have such a license to rape.
Well, you said he has been smearing Desiree Washington. I want you to take a look at this little piece right here, because I asked him, what do you think about Desiree Washington? And this is what he said. And we'll be back right after this. This is the question I've had the hardest in my own mind of being able to ask you. I'm going to tell you, to be honest. I don't want to ask you this one.
Please ask me. Please.
I'm serious.
Please, because I just need to hear everything. Tell me everything, because you have to leave soon.
Desiree Washington. How do you feel about Desiree Washington?
I don't want to comment on that. I don't want to give, because it wouldn't dignify me if I gave you my comments. I'm not willing to comment on that.
I don't mean slamming her. I mean, do you feel sorry for her? Because do you feel angry at her?
I don't want to comment on this.
Should Mike Tyson receive a new trial? We'd like your opinion. Call 1-900-933-3900. Press 1 for yes or 2 for no. Each call costs 75 cents per minute. All proceeds will benefit the United Negro College Fund, Incorporated.
We've been talking about whether or not Mike Tyson deserves a new trial based on his appeal, and I need some closing comments. What's the bottom line, Mark?
The Mike Tyson conviction is one of the great injustices in American history, in my opinion. Is he a vicious rapist, or is he a man who was railroaded into prison? Is Desiree Washington a gold-digging whore who made up this story, or is she a woman who should have put Mike Tyson in prison with her testimony. We'll never know until we start over, we get a fair judge, we get a good, competent defense counsel, good prosecutor, find out what happened on those, in those 5 minutes on that bed. Let's try it over again.
All right, Andy, what do you think? What do you think?
I believe that Mike Tyson should get a new trial. I've said before that on the one issue about the perjury, I believe the court committed error. So I do believe there should be a retrial on that. At the same time, I do want to say that I believe Judge Gifford was as fair as any judge could be. I've known her personally for years, and I do believe she was a fair judge, although I disagree with some of her rulings. And finally, although I do believe Mike Tyson should get a new trial, I do not believe that he should be painted as such a nice guy as I'm hearing in the news media.
Okay. Gloria, what do you think?
Well, I'm very proud of Desiree Washington. Even though she was 18 years old, had vaginal abrasions, called 911, was subjected to the smear campaign of the century in the media, she had the courage to go forward with this case, as did this very courageous judge and as did the courageous prosecutor. And as a result, he was convicted, and we have now learned that justice is there not just for the rich, not just for the powerful, not for just for the celebrities, but also for rape victims like 18-year-old Desiree Washington.
And Nat, what do you think?
I'm a strong believer in the jury system. I think they are capable of determining who is telling the truth, but you have to give them the tools. You have to give them the facts. They have to be able to make that determination. And I think in this case, they were not given the tools. And as a matter of fact, in a number of cases, they were giving misinformation. And that's not appropriate in terms of our jury system.
Okay, well, joining us right now is Judge Jeff Bowles. And I have to say, first of all, thank you very much, sir, for allowing us to use this courtroom, because you are the judge in the Hendricks County
Circuit Court here in Danville.
Circuit Court here in Danville. Thank you for letting us use this.
You're welcome.
A lot of people are going to say that I presented something crazy here. What do you think about the presentation that we made today?
I just had a chance to watch the whole program, and this is as straightforward, right down the line journalism that I've ever seen anywhere along the line. And your viewers and everybody can decide how they view it. But this is as straightforward, not leaning on one side or the other, as anything I've ever seen. Great panel.
And we're almost out of time. And I think maybe the bottom line to this whole scenario is the fact that we, the public, now have heard both sides, some arguments. We haven't heard it all. We've read the newspapers. We've come up with some of our own decisions. Some people say adamantly he does not deserve a new trial. Some people say that he does. But ultimately, I got to tell you, it doesn't matter what we think. It doesn't matter what we, the jurors, think. I mean, not jurors, the public, the journalists. It doesn't matter what we think. The only thing that matters is what the court thinks. I want to thank all of our panel for being participants. I want to thank you all here who came out to be a part of the Montel Show. I got to tell you, there's one thing that this country stands for, and it's justice. And I think that's what everybody wants. Desiree wants it, Mike Tyson wants it, and the public wants it. Let's get it. Thank you. Join us on the next Montel.
And go back.